Hey guys, we're going to be continuing on the Is It Good series, where we will be talking about the competitive builds on a variety of heroes in specifically tournaments that have a prize pool. These are players that are really good, and they're bringing heroes that they're comfortable with on builds that they are willing to bet money on. And we are going to be talking about, are these builds good? Are these builds that you should be playing in normal games? Are these builds that are only good in competitive? Are they only good in certain situations? And today we are going to be talking about the Turk and how he brought 4-man DeathWing into the meta. DeathWing, I've said, is a solo laner forever. A lot of people have tried to make him into a tank. It just really hasn't worked. We actually saw in CCL, it almost never worked. In the competitive scene for Heroes Lounge, it has worked for the solo lane, but the Turk was the one that I've seen the first time use DeathWing as a 4-man hero, and it is surprisingly scary. So we're going to be talking about DeathWing in the 4-man and really breaking down why he takes it in the 4-man and why he likes it for the 4-man. So the first thing is that he tends to play DeathWing very aggressively in the 4-man, and he just uses it as pretty much a second tank that doesn't need to be healed. Because your main tank is still going to be there to back up, have all of the tankiness that you need while you can gain all of your life back in the sky, and you get to just play really aggressive, and then you can still heal by getting globes in each lane, because oftentimes the 4-man is double soaking. The Turk uses his breath very liberally. He only really uses his Incinerate and his Onslaught while he's in the middle of a team fight. His Molten Flame he uses to burn everything that he can find. So he double soaks back and forth for his team like a solo laner would, but he just covers it because he can get the globe, which will give him pretty much all of his life back that he lost from the engage. And he just goes back and joins his team once again. He plays DeathWing in the early game like a melee assassin that just has a big health bar. And then in the late game, he plays a little bit like a ranged assassin, but will sometimes jump in with the melee values as well. So he is a pretty cool DeathWing player. There is another game that I'd like to show DeathWing that was an NGS game, which I'll probably do that as well for a second style of play. It was the final game in NGS for the Heroic Division, the highest level of play in NGS. And they had a playstyle of DeathWing that I really want to make a video about. But I did still want to talk about the Turks just because I was watching CCL and I did say I was going to mention this one. Both of them are really cool. So remember that DeathWing has big delays on a lot of his abilities, so the Turk tends to play out a little bit safer. But he tends to miss some of these abilities as well. So that's something that, again, don't focus too heavily on the mechanics. We're going to be talking about builds, and we're going to be talking about gameplay. Early portions of the game, he double soaks for his team. He gains his life back by picking up globes, and he doesn't use the global very much. He uses it primarily for healing. The build that he goes is very similar to the W build that I was sharing in Destroyer form. He goes Dragon Soul, which then increases the healing of your W. He goes Heat Wave, which increases the DPS off of landing your W. And this build works really, really well on this map because it's melting the objective while he's also doing a ridiculous amount of damage and self-healing at the same time. So he's going to walk into this fight, uses E, uses W, and he's just going to melt through and take all of this objective without even trying. And so he walks away from the Leoric's Drain Hope, jumps back in, burns, and he's just eating these minions without even trying. He's now going to 1v1 a dragon in the backline and jump into their team. He doesn't have his ult up for 20 more seconds, so he unfortunately can't use that yet. But he may be able to use that to win this objective as we're approaching the end of that first objective. He walks away to make sure that Trickster doesn't get those extra heals. He goes back in, fires one more Cataclysm, and then he walks away. He uses his breath to do some DPS from range, and his Cataclysm's available if he wants to pop that, just to try to win the rest of this objective. Ragnaros gets a great Molten Core, which is able to steal away a good 15 of the objectives. He grabs one globe on the way up to gain the majority of his health back, but he will be prepared to hop back down in just a second. Let me see if I can turn off the, there we go. This is watching his camera in the air. So he's watching to jump down, and he's just waiting until it jumps over. It jumps over, he jumps in the back line, uses fire first, and then he uses his onslaught to reposition, so he can then slow them and burn them down. He continues slowing them, tries to pop a Cataclysm, but dies before he can do it. He uses his Cataclysm primarily as an escape, but again, remember the delays that DeathWing has. Make sure that you are using your Cataclysm ahead of the time that you actually think that you need it, because it does have that delay. He's going to use Dragonflight because he just needs to get back in the air. Watching the screen, he notices that they're doing this camp down here, but he doesn't have vision on it, so he might just jump near here. But he's just watching. Remember that the same way that he played Leoric, he's going to try to play in a way that encourages this soaking. He wants to keep the experience up for his team. It's probably lower than the Ragnaros just because the Ragnaros has had the solo lane the entire time, while he has had to go back and forth. There is some soak being missed mid, so he's going to head down there, grab that soak for his team, and do what he can and try to keep them up on experience. Unfortunately, they are down by almost an entire level. There is currently a main tank Uther this game. I would make a video on main tank Uther, but it seems like it's getting a lot of nerfs, and with a couple balance patches coming up, well, actually, when I'm recording this video versus when I'm scheduling this video, the balance patch that I'm talking about is probably already out. But I'm just expecting Uther main tank to get a nerf and Uther main healer to get a buff. That's what I'm expecting, but who knows? I've been wrong before. I've also been right once or twice though, so I'll take credit here and there. Yeah, so he's just essentially soaking, trying to stay in the game, not do anything too crazy, and they're just playing it out safe. Ragnaros is going to go deal with that camp that was just picked up, so he might head up there to get some extra soak, because his team's covering the double soak. And if he does do that, then they'll be in a really good spot. As far as level 10, the talent that he takes is Bellowing Roar. Bellowing Roar is kind of like Horrify from Gul'dan, except for its melee range, and it is on a delay that's much bigger than Horrify. So it's really difficult to land unless the enemies are not expecting it, and then it's very powerful when it does land, because it is just Horrify, which is one of the best ults in the game. So Bellowing Roar is really good. It does do damage, which I think the only reason that it does damage, because it only does 39 damage, I think it just does damage to like wake up asleep before they before the roar goes out. But yeah, he jumps in on the back line, does a lot of damage to the heals, does a lot of damage to them. Bellowing Roars to sends Casanova down, and then continues on doing damage. So you can see this backline playstyle is what he goes for. This is the same playstyle that we saw from Liam's Sonya, as well as Leon Black's Mal'Ganis, is focus on the backline, try to be as disruptive as possible. Even if you're not winning, even if you're not doing like the most damage, being disruptive is a huge boon for your team. So he plays almost like a bruiser, except for he's put in the role of the 4-man. This allows you to run an actual bruiser so that you can kind of suicide to get a lot of value for your team without losing your bruiser position. Without enemies nearby to get the extra trigger off of the Heat Wave talent on Incinerate, he decides that it's fastest to probably just get them grouped up and then breath. So you will see he gets them grouped up and then he breaths. And same thing, he's going to work on this objective, and this is something you normally have the solo laner work on. With Trickster showing up, this is actually a good thing for him, because now he's going to have the Incinerate's Heat Wave talent getting value, and he'll be able to get more off of that. With more people showing up, he decides it's probably not going to be the best anymore. He can grab the fountain, use Dragonflight, and hop back in the fight in about 8 seconds. Or he can just walk right back into the fight. He will only have the 20 armor, but he can still do quite a bit from this. Cataclysm is available, and he also has Heat Wave available. He still has Bellowing Roar, which he activates to get Leoric out of the fight. Then he uses his Cataclysm aggressively to put damage over times on everyone. So Leoric hops back in the fight when everyone is CC'd and everyone's running away from the Cataclysm, allowing him to safely take out Leoric and safely take out Casanova. I mean, in this case, Casanova is still going to be okay, but he does a breath to burn quite a bit, and the enemies run away. Let's talk about his build one more time. As he's dead, we're going to fast forward through his death and talk about what he's picked up. Death Drop is what he takes at level 7. Death Drop, the meta talent is Skyfall. allowing you to use your global like other global heroes, where you could figure out the time you want to go and then immediately drop. However, he goes with death drop, so when he drops, he can use his abilities much faster. And so he drops down, he hits on someone, and then boom, he's ready to go. And in this case, he didn't hit on an enemy hero, but he's ready to go. He uses Bellowing Roar because he does get very low health because of that bullet, but because of the Entomb, he's not going to be able to get out of this fight. He can try to use a Cataclysm to get out. He's going to try to do one more heal on an Incinerate, but he gets taken out. Death Drop lowers the enemy's spell armor and allows him to cast abilities right after he drops down, or at least 2 seconds after, as opposed to the normal 3. Oh no, it's 1 second after, as opposed to the normal 3. So it's a really good talent if you want to immediately jump on people. And then after Bellowing Roar, he takes Ruination. Onslaught's bite slow, Earthshatter's cost is reduced. So Onslaught's bite slows for 60%, which is a huge slow, and Earthshatter's cooldown's reduced as well as its energy cost. Now, he doesn't go into that form very often, so he's primarily taking this for a 60% slow on the bite. Again, something that a melee assassin would want more so than a bruiser, because a bruiser is going to want like Fire and Fury. I mean, I guess either or. Bruiser would probably go Ruination, Assassin would go Fire and Fury. The build I wanted to show from NGS uses Wicked Inferno. Let me switch back over to where he's looking. The one in NGS uses Wicked Inferno and then also uses Conflagration. I really like that build because as you get squishier and squishier the later the game goes, because people do more damage, you have the option of having a ranged build. And it's a better build for following up CC on your team because this Conflagration does so much damage to groups that are clustered in small zones. So I will recommend that you guys try that variation of this of DeathWing because it's surprisingly fun. But this build, it works out really well for the Turk. Even though they're not winning in kills, they're winning almost every objective because of the disruption that he's having during those fights. So he's watching up here, even though he's slowly walking up there. He's not using his global, but that's fine. They have camps pushing in every single lane, and all of their entire team looks like they're going to be approaching top. He's going to go in the air because, remember, he likes to play a more surprise version of DeathWing, right? He's going to jump in, surprise slow someone, surprise do some damage, surprise fear someone. So he plays a very surprise-heavy DeathWing. Oh, you're about to kill him? Surprise! We have a huge amount of temporary health. So that's one of the things that he does very, very well, is he plays this surprise DeathWing. And again, even most people think DeathWing's a soul laner. Surprise, 4-man. So now that he's level 16, it all just comes down to letting his team cover everything, and he can be wherever his team needs them to be. I think this playstyle of DeathWing could actually be really cool on Dragonshire, because one of the things about Dragonshire is that heroes that have a global that can join their solo lane is really important. So having a 4-man DeathWing on Dragonshire would be really cool, because your solo lane, if it starts struggling, you just drop down on the enemy solo laner, do a bunch of damage, zone them out, burn up a structure, and then just go and walk back down to your team again. And you'll do a lot to the 4-man, but then you also are going to be pretty scary to the solo laner. So I kind of like this surprise DeathWing for something like that. And I think it's just a different playstyle than what we've seen before. So he doesn't have his ult because he had to use it for Soak, and this is creating a pretty rough team fight for his team. So he's going to Cataclysm in while Molten Core stuns everyone, and then he's going to go through and do a bunch of damage. In this case, he is slowing people by 60% with Onslaught, and he's also doing a huge amount of damage with Incinerate. His Molten Breath finishes off one person and sets up another kill as they are able to take this out, getting their Kerrigan out of the fight, or out of the rough area. And he's able to just do a bunch of damage with his Incinerate's Heat Wave still stacking. He takes a couple shots for his team, jumps back in to do a 60% slow, uses his W, and he still has the Bellowing Roar available if they want to go back in for one more fight. He's going to go in, do one more W to set up, continue that Incinerate going, and then that heat wave anyways, and he can charge back in too slow, but he really wants the team to get out. It's clear that he is shot calling and telling his team, let's get out. I mean, I don't know if he's actually shot calling, but it's clear that his team is making the call to get out of these fights, and it's just a really long fight. So in this case, it's a great time to Bellowing Roar if he can get his team into a position where he can get a nice Bellowing Roar. And he keeps going for Incinerate instead of Bellowing Roar. I guess it's because his team's winning. There's the Bellowing Roar to get those two enemies away. He goes for 60% slow. He misses it. Pops Elementium Plating to try to keep himself alive. Unfortunately, this is going to be really rough. He is able to get out, and he did end up baiting one extra kill out of that too. He's going to get a Fountain and then Dragonflight. The benefits of doing this is Dragonflight takes a while to heal you back. If you combine it with the Fountain, it allows you to drop down much earlier from a low amount of health. So now he's watching the fights to see if he can go back in. Or he's like, you know what? Nope, we won the objective. I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to help close out this game early. So in this situation, he then took the surprise DeathWing, won a bunch of fights, had a really good situation, and they are able to close out the game. So I wanted to show this DeathWing build just because it's a little different from what everyone else is running, and it's just really fun. So at level 20, he takes Destroyer's Rampage, making it to where after you land in Destroyer form, you increase your damage and your basic ability cooldowns recharge faster. And it's just, again, it's the surprise factor. He jumps down, does a bunch of damage, scares everyone, and gets stuff done. The only thing I would change in this build, if I were to recommend anything different, is instead of Ruination, I would recommend Fire and Fury, and this would essentially be the build that I recommended initially when DeathWing released as a surprise DeathWing build. I just never thought about running it in the 4-man. So that's what the Turk brought to the table. Is it good? I think the playstyle blew my mind. When I was watching it, it was really cool. So I say yes. Is the build good? It's essentially my build. So of course, I'm going to say the build is good. But I'm going to try out Ruination to see if that 60% slow is worth taking that talent over the reduced cooldowns of the other talents, to see if I've been wrong this whole time, because overall, yes, I think that this was very good, and I think it is one of the things that allowed them to start winning games. Is they were struggling for a while, and they started winning games after he started picking this 4-man DeathWing, and he's the only person to get any wins with DeathWing in CCL, so it's gotta be good. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to check out any of my other videos, especially the other Is It Good series, as well as check out the Season 2 of CCL. Follow Heroes Hearts Twitter and Twitch and all of that, so you guys can see the next set of celebrities in the Celebrity Clash League. Thank you guys so much once again.